Thursday, and I'm excited, and we're excited because we always have some guests that's coming on that anyways, before we get to that, thank y'all. Thank you guys for being very supportive and sharing the videos, the videos, the stories of the Black Podcast. You know, that's your way of contributing to what we're doing. And so that's why we created this space. So we have to make sure that we do our part and share, because you never know who's in your circle that may need to hear the stories of the guests that we have, and you may not know what you may grow for or how you may grow from hearing the stories of our guests. Because I know, and Brian probably would say agree, that we have grown so much over the last 2 years of just hearing people's stories, connecting, making relevant relationships, and building our community just based off the people that we have brought here. So I know if I'm growing, you have to be growing too. So please make sure you continue to share. You know about the Black Podcast and why we're here. And the bigger picture of the HSBA and why we started the Black Podcast, to change the narrative of young Black men in our community. And so the way that we do it is sharing real stories, sharing our stories. We see these people all the time on ESPN, BET, MTV, CBS, and we're like, man, those people, they're doing this and they're doing that. I wonder how they got there. Well, those are the kind of guests that we bring here. So please make sure that you're watching. And again, that you're sharing, and thank you for supporting us here on the Black Podcast, as well as our company, HSBA.
Well, I don't really have much to say. I'm just ready to zip up and hear from this outstanding guest. I know you and I both are in the athletic space, so we have a history in the athletic space, and she has a present in the athletic space on occasion, but from the other side of the coin, so to say. So I'm just honored to have this young lady before us today to continue, showing the spectrum of greatness that we are within our community. You guys know enough about me. I don't need to belabor. So we're going to make the most of this hour and change, or however long we have this young lady before us today. So without further ado, we have Miss Kelsey Nicole Nelson. How's it going?
Hi, I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. An honor and pleasure, honestly, to be here. And I love what you all are doing with your platform. So keep it up. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest today. I know we'll have fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, at first, when we started looking for guests, we're always looking like, whose story do we want to share? What are they doing? And so I've been in athletic space for 17 years. And so when I started to see women of color in these spaces and look like women, it was like, yes,
We're here.
Come on. So we're just so excited about the things that you're doing. And of course, when we first initially see your social media and your videos, and the journey looks so easy, and the path looks so smooth, no trials, no tribulations, no nothing, right? And so it's like, we want to know more about her. We want to know her story, because we don't share too many of those stories of how that journey really is. And so we know behind every glory is a story. And so if you can first start off with letting us know who you are, where you're from, and then speak on the dynamics of your family growing up.
Of course. So happy to share that. And I love what you said. I always preach that, people see the glory, especially on social media, but they don't know the story behind it. And there's so much to that story. And once you understand someone's story, you really understand where they're coming from, and it's easier for you to walk in their shoes. But for me, I am Kelsey Nicole Nelson. I am a freelance sports reporter. So I work for a bunch of different companies, but mainly doing NBA coverage for Bally Sports, national on-air host and contributor for them, as well as Fox Sports Radio. I do a bunch of things for them, host, report on everything, pretty much DC sports, and also the national sports realm. I do everything from TV to radio, basically each and every week, going on different shows, discussing the latest and greatest in sports, especially from a DC lens, and especially as a woman. So most recently, I've been talking a lot about the 50th anniversary of Title IX, lots about the Washington Commanders team. And then today's a bit crazy because NBA free agency. So that's kind of the realm of work that I'm doing in sports. I also work in education. I have a community community action project that I am turning into a nonprofit at this very moment, building out my board called Books Breaking Borders, Books to End Educational Bankruptcy, which is near and dear to my heart. It's something I started back as an undergraduate at the University of Maryland, College Park, for the Turtle and Go Terps. Had to shout them out. We're doing a lot better in sports now, by the way, too. So it's a great time to be a Terp. I'm also a capstone advisor for Georgetown University in their sports industry management program. And I've also taught intro to podcasting and radio. So kind of doing a spectrum of different things, and do a bunch in education here with nonprofits as well in the DMV area. So people just like to call me Kelsey that does somehow everything and wears a smile while doing it. But about my story, I grew up in the DMV area. For those that don't know, that's DC, Maryland, Virginia. I grew up in a place called Germantown, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, DC. Pretty diverse area. But I used to spend my summers actually in Jackson, Mississippi. So I like to think of myself as a Southern belle in the DMV. Got a little bit of a mix of the Southern vibe as well as the East Coast vibe. And the reason why I used to spend my summers in Mississippi is I grew up with my parents here, but I, as the first child, just me and my sister, the childcare in the DC area was really expensive. So I used to get sent down to Mississippi to go spend the summers with my grandmother, and I would go to Bible school camp in the summers. So it was a very interesting, perplex, but I got to spend a lot of time with my family in Mississippi, so that was great. And then growing up with my mom and dad in the DMV area, I'm a daddy's girl, so I played a bunch of sports growing up. My dad went to Maryland State University, so sports was my first love because I grew up with Eddie Robinson posters and Doug Williams posters in my bedroom. So football was the first love quite naturally, and just really fell into sports. I hit my growth spurt super early. So, when you're tall, the first question that people ask you is, what sport do you play? And luckily, I always had an answer because I was always involved in different things. I played everything from tennis to basketball to soccer to volleyball. I just was competitive, and I loved the thrill and action of the game. Also went to a bunch of daycares growing up and a Boys and Girls Club kid. So I was always playing dodgeball, kickball, kind of always that girl, especially that was with the guys and beating the guys, by the way. And so for me, it was just fun. I feel like I had a typical childhood, always active. That's one of the things I hate now when I pass playgrounds and don't see kids outside. I'm like, they're missing a whole part of childhood. Went through school, was really good academically. So I was always a stellar student, and just always balanced academics and sports. My parents were always you can do sports, but you got to be passing your classes. And I did always love reading and writing. So for me, honestly, it was a natural fit to do sports journalism, right? Because I love reading and writing, especially writing. I loved writing long papers, maybe opposite for most kids. I hated when we used to get 500 words.
Yeah.
I was like, what's 500 words? That's a paragraph. How am I supposed to say anything? And then a love of sports. And so I remember in middle school, helping with the yearbook, making sure the sports section looked great. And then going on to high school, same thing, playing sports, becoming editor-in-chief of my high school yearbook. And I went to a brand new high school at the time. So I was one of the first people in that position. And then same thing with newspaper club, same thing, becoming the news managing editor. And really just making sure, how to pick stories, how to play stories, and how to really write and hone and craft stories. So I'm in high school and I'm loving journalism. I'm Oprah, especially being from the DMV area, Oprah is a legend here for what she did starting in Baltimore. And then she's really familiar to me as well because she's from Mississippi. And, so I'm thinking I want to be just like her, but the sports Oprah. So that's what I'm thinking in my mind and my head. But, before I go to college, everyone's like, Kelsey, journalists don't make any money. And not coming from a lot of money, I was like, well, why did I go to school to be in something where you don't make a lot of money? So I'm like, all right. I like CSI and crime shows. So I'm going to be a psychology major. I want to get into the minds of criminals and figure out, why they do what they do and hopefully try to help them on a better path. So I start University of Maryland as an undergraduate. It was the only school I applied to in Maryland because most kids, I thought I wanted to leave, but very glad I made the decision to stay in the hometown area because College Park is close to DC, lots of opportunities and options. But I remember being in my psychology class and just not being happy, not having that thrill for learning. And so I go talk to my advisor. I'm like, look, something's got to change. And she's like, well, let's give it one more semester and just see, after that second semester, if you still don't like it, we can work on getting you out of this limited enrollment program and trying to get you into a new limited enrollment program in journalism. So I did the second semester, same thing, enough about Freud. I've heard all his stories. I want to move on. So I switched into the journalism program and also started doing public policy. And I feel like the rest is kind of history. It just felt like a natural fit for me. I loved being at Maryland. They do a lot of one-man band stuff. So you go check out your camera equipment, you go shoot the story, you edit the story, and you send it in. So you kind of really learn every part of being a journalist, behind the camera, in front front of the camera, the editing process, super helpful. And then also going to University of Maryland, you have professors that work in the industry and field. So you're learning from like some of the top journalists in the country. My senior year, I had Kevin Blackstone as a professor, like just to show people the spectrum, so learning from people like that, it was great. And also to your guys' point, I got experience in a lot of different things. I worked for Maryland Athletics. So I learned the media relations side, interning for them. So learning that side of being a journalist. I moved to Charlotte during a summer and worked for NASCAR. Wanted to challenge myself to learn a brand new sport that I really knew nothing about. Was a diversity intern for them, working in integrated marketing and communications. In their Charlotte office. I did a bunch of education internships. I joined the America Reads, America Counts program. So I was a math mentor at Templeton Elementary School. I was a little bit of everywhere in college, but just because I love doing so many different things. I never liked when people ask you what you want to do and just wanted one answer. Like, why can't you do multiple things? Why can't you be a plethora of things? So I'm loving college. Get through college, and like most people, started to send out my job applications. And I realized like small towns weren't even like getting back to me. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I thought about it. I was like, growing up in the DMV, do I really want to go to a small town after being here? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to graduate school, just figure out my plan and, just figure out what I'm going to do. So I graduate college, have no plan in mind, go back to my parents' house and just start sending out job applications. But luckily for me, I started getting freelance gigs here and there. I started doing freelance television for public access. Covering high school sports was like my first kind of opportunity to be on TV. And luckily in the DMV area, high school sports, at least at the time, were pretty big because we have a lot of big schools in the area. And a lot of talented athletes, come from here, which is great. I.e., if you saw something in the water, perfect example of some of the talent that comes out of this area. Kind of went on next to covering women's sports for public access television. And then I'm doing the job, and I'm like, how am I going to make myself stand out? I want to get to that next level. So I applied to grad school at Georgetown. Get into Georgetown. They have a great program, only 3 semesters, which was a perk for me because I don't want to be in school for the rest of my life. And Georgetown was great. Same thing. Lots of great professors that work in the industry, do really well at Georgetown. Have a great professor from the NCAA, get to volunteer for NCAA events in the DC area since their public policy office is here. Start working for Georgetown Athletics as an intern in the annual fund, learning how to fundraise for collegiate sports, which is a humbling experience, especially when sports teams are not doing very well. At the time, Georgetown basketball was not doing that well. And of course, that's their big money maker at the university, go through grad school. And once I leave grad school, kind of get more of an opportunity to get my name out there. I'm still covering sports in the area and really growing my brand. And from there, I graduate Georgetown and I started just getting different opportunities. And that's kind of when I learned about freelancing, which at first I didn't know was like a big thing. I thought you have to go get a full-time job in the journalism industry and just kind of work from there. But freelancing kind of started right after grad school. And I just kind of stayed with it, and opportunity after opportunity came. I accepted a job here. I'm getting opportunities to do lots of public speaking in the area, something I hadn't really planned for. And then kind of fast forward, that's kind of what I've been doing ever since then, doing freelancing, but obviously now on a larger scale. I got asked into teaching, also was not on the plan, but, started teaching journalism. And I feel like my story has just kind of been kind of an ever evolving story. And I think that's what's kind of fun and great. And now, I absolutely love what I do. And now I've been able to start a company, Cryption, to kind of encompass all of my different services. So if somebody wants to book me for public speaking, or, do a lot of panel talks or anything like that, they're able to kind of book me that way. And then also for tax time, it's great to have a company. Had to learn that the hard way when you start working for a lot of different companies and getting the W-9. So that's kind of how I landed where I am, and luckily still in my hometown area, which is really great since obviously this is the area that I know best, like the back of my hand. And it's kind of great now to have been branded as like the kind of female sports authority in the DMV area. That's a lot of people come to me for now. And then also now I've been hired more nationally, and I've even got to work internationally. So now I'm doing even projects with groups like Special Olympics, which is near and dear to my heart. I actually had an uncle that had Down syndrome and used to spend the summer with him in Mississippi. So working with groups like that, I kind of get to touch on my philanthropic work, those issues close and near to my heart. And then the main thing, I get to stay around my love of sports, working in sports each and every day and covering a wide plethora of sports. So literally, I'm just living out my dream right now, which has been great, hard, but great. And, I learn each and every day on how to make myself better at my job and opportunity.
Wow. That's so amazing. So when you talked about earlier, how being in sports, like I know when I went to college, my undergrad. I was a track athlete,
Yeah.
but I don't remember hearing a lot of people speak on, women being in a leadership role, women being on, reporters for sports, so it was always like, okay, you can be a nurse, a teacher. If you want to be in sports medicine, if you want to be in sports, you can do sports medicine, and so those were the ones they really pushed for. So when you're on this journey, like very early on, and you're in the sports, you're very active, and so when you get onto that space of now transitioning from, like when you're doing your internships in college and all that kind of stuff, did you ever come in like have any challenges, like people maybe not taking you so serious because they're like, she's cute, she's this, she's that, like everything but what like, did you
Yeah.
ever have any of those challenges, and what
Oh
were
yeah.
the challenges like?
Oh my gosh, all the time. And even now, I still have those challenges. I think a lot as a female, unfortunately, there's a lot of spaces and places that people still don't want you in. And I think early on, especially being a Black female, I remember walking in rooms and just feeling like I wasn't wanted there, or walking into press box or locker rooms and just having all eyes kind of glare on you. Kind of like, why is she here? What is she doing here? Not having people kind of come up and kind of show you the ropes. So luckily for me, I've had great mentors, that have kind of helped lead me throughout the way. But as you said, I think as a female, that's always coming up. And especially with the advent of social media, it's a lot easier for people to get to you and kind of say these things to you, to try to make you feel unwanted. But luckily for me, growing up with like thick skin, and that's honestly thanks to my parents, my dad and mom told me from the beginning, there's nothing, that I can't do. And even when I didn't see people in places and spaces that I wanted to be in, they said, if that's not there, why don't you be the first, and why don't you create it? And so that's kind of the mindset that I've always had. And especially working and growing up in the DC area, I didn't get to always see women that look like me in sports. And that made me even more, want to do this, because I knew how important it was to kind of open that door. And I tell people all the time, it's not just about having a seat at the table. It's about being able to pull your chair up comfortably to the table, put your elbows down at the table, being able to talk at that table. People take you seriously and provide feedback, and then making sure you leave that table with more chairs for those that are coming behind you. So that's kind of always the mindset, that I've had when I've been in these kind of different things. So for me, I think, in sports, you're always going to have kind of that unwelcome feeling. And luckily it's getting more diverse, but, we still have a lot of work to do. And especially when you're the one, you almost feel like you have this weight of carrying, like everything on you. Cause you're like, like I'm the Black woman here. They're going to judge all Black women based off of me and how I interact. And, I'm also thinking about the people that are going to come behind me. I want to make sure that the door stays even wider open, for them. And so actually one of the reasons why I started my Sports Talk podcast, back in 2017, after I had graduated grad schools, because I wasn't getting opportunities. Like people in the area, even though I was from the area, knew sports very well here, I felt like, paid my dues and had, the resume to kind of accompany everything that I knew. I wasn't getting opportunities. And so luckily I had a friend say, why don't you just start something? It's like, you're right. And that's when I started my Sports Talk podcast, and it grew very quickly. Had a bunch of connects in sports, had really top guests coming on, and we would just have conversations such as we're having now. And I think that's when people were like, all right, we have to kind of take her more seriously, because she's built her own platform. She has reputable people coming here, and, it's really growing amongst the masses and people are talking about it. And so that's kind of the mindset that I had, when I wasn't being welcomed in, I made my own space, and luckily that space grew and people supported it. And I'm forever thankful for that. And my podcast is now still something I have today. And now I've been able to extend that olive branch, to have interns now, so they have an opportunity to also have a space in place where they can grow and develop their skills and talents. But, all the time I was told no. I've been called everything from like bimbo to, as you said, you're just a pretty face, to I'm always smiling like you're too nice to be in sports. I don't like your voice. It's not deep enough. I have critiques and criticisms, like list galore. It's always going on. And especially as a female, when you're working in sports, often, unfortunately, you're critiqued, based off of your outside before you even open your mouth, which is really unfortunate, because it's like, I'm here because of the credentials and the work that I put in, right? But also, my exterior is a part of who I am, because, this is me. Like, this is what I like to be. This is what I take pride in, but that should not be the focus, or the center point. And so I think for me, it's like just knowing that, even when I've gone through that, of course, like most people, you have, your times where sometimes it gets in your mind, it gets in your head, it, but you have to get in that place and space. Remember that, I'm walking in my purpose. I'm following in him. In him, I trust. And this is where he's led me to. So this is where I'm meant and supposed to be. And I'm going to do what it takes to stay here and make sure I do what it takes, to always have a place here, and have others coming from behind me. But yeah, even till this day, I still have that, people trying to doubt you. I saw a Reddit board, where people were saying maybe not the kindest things. And it was all based off of exterior, which is just like, or just inappropriate things, I should say, based off of exterior. But, it's a part of life, unfortunately. And it is going to be throughout your career. Sometimes you'll even have people that, are close in your corner that don't believe in you, unfortunately. Another time, my parents second guessed what I was doing. My parents are government workers, so to them, it's like, just go get a government job, stay in government and retire, get your retirement check, even though it's a bit different now, so when I'm coming on this path, like, hey, mom and dad, I want to do sports reporting. And when they saw early on, I wasn't getting the opportunities. It's kind of like, Kelsey, you're smart. You have this great experience. Why don't you just go get a safe job? And that's kind of the thing I think
the
you're
safe
talking
stuff.
about. The safe stuff, right? But now, luckily, I think we have a new crop of, whatever they are, Gen Z, that's like creating these entrepreneurial like mindsets. I think that's kind of where my mindset was. But mind you, I did always have something to keep income coming in, right? So I was able to support that and also doing my dream. So I would go from working an internship to grad school to covering games at night. So I was working almost 24/7. So I had money to pay, and my money would go to paying the metro fare back and forth. I remember being always on that last metro train going back home after leaving a game. But that's what I wanted to do, and that's what needed to be done, for me to get where I am. And even so now I think back to all the people that tried to talk me out of it, all the negative things, and those are the same people probably viewing my profile all the time, seeing what I'm doing, and probably secretly supporting doing, because they saw that, she came, she saw, she conquered. And that's honestly my mindset.
Wow. Yeah. And a lot of times I tell people all the time, especially us as women, who, like I said, I've always been in track. So I've had that track body and the this and the that. And, I show up with the resume and the experience and ready to share. And they're like, okay, yeah, when we get to that. But right now, let's talk about, and it's like, oh my gosh, and for some, it can be very overwhelming because you feel like we have to have these things. I was in the athletic director space. Yeah. So, how would you speak to football coaches if it's time to fire them? It's like, why are you asking me that? So always, what was difficult or challenging for me was, staying true to who you are. Yes. And people would say stuff like, well, maybe you should wear your hair straight. So I straightened it. Maybe you should pull it back. And then I pull it back. And then maybe, and so you just finding yourself constantly changing like who you are to try to fit in this box. Right. And so it can be very overwhelming. It can be challenging, but having people in your corner, having your family, people that'll say like, girl, and then with being very competitive in sports, you're like, do you realize everything you tell me I can't do, I'm about to do? And so, that's the kind of journey or the challenge that we are still going through as, women, of making sure not only you had to go volunteer, you had to go do interns, to get where you're at right now, whereas someone caught a couple of great passes and they go straight from,
got a straighter path.
And so that is definitely happening. And you don't really, unless you're in it and you're experiencing, you can't really explain it.
Exactly.
But it does, it can affect your mental or how you feel, because you're constantly feeling like you have to have more and more. More. Until you get to that place where you can say like, okay, this is it. I'm not getting anything else. I'm not getting any more certifications unless I want to, but just always thinking that we have to have more. So it is important that women share more of those stories. Like they say that sports is becoming more diverse but you still see a lot of, Caucasian women. You don't see a lot of Black women, and the Black women that they bring in, it's a lot of times it's like, okay, well, she used to play basketball for the WNBA or the, and so it's still like, okay, we'll let a couple of people in, but not everybody. And so you do have to create that own space. And so I want you to speak on just that going through that journey of how you was able to separate this is my truth. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But this is also the space that I want to be in.
Yeah.
Even if it's like just to check that box as you have your own stuff going on, like talk
Mm-hmm.
more about that place of the stigma that we have as being the strong Black woman, or people saying, well, how did she get up there? She must have slept with somebody, right? Because you still have women that feel like they have to do those things to get, where they need to be. So speak
Yeah.
more on that journey, like how you're able to stay like in that stable mental space,
Yeah.
those challenges.
Of course. My apologies first off if the sun decided to get the highest during our interview. But hope that's not too distracting. But yeah, I think as you said, as a woman, I think you always, unfortunately, in sports, like I remember coming up, like always second guessing myself, as you mentioned, always thinking I wasn't good enough. I didn't have enough, even though I felt like, I was doing everything in my power, but I'd seen other people that don't look like me kind of quickly graduating and getting straight into the industry, so it makes you feel like, am I enough? What am I kind of doing wrong? And I know for a long time, it took me a good little while, I think, to really find my voice in this industry, meaning, I thought I had to be like other people to succeed in this industry. So I found myself trying to mimic other people. And it's like sometimes when I talk, oh, well, you don't sound Black. And then it's like, oh, or you sound too Black. And it's like, I mean, I can't win for losing. This is my voice. Like, this is the voice that I've had since, I was yay high. Like, this is how I am. And, especially coming from, I had done pageants in high school, and kind of like beginning college. And, I felt like I kind of always had this perfectionism, that's kind of what and that's honestly why, now I like judging and, doing stuff like that for the pageant world, but I don't miss being a contestant in the pageant world because always this need to be perfect. And then also, I always felt like I was trying to be what my parents wanted me to be, what everybody else wanted me to be. So kind of listening to all this outside noise and then realizing one day, like when I looked at myself, I couldn't really describe who I was. I could describe who everybody else wanted me to be, who they thought I was, but I didn't know who I was. And so I remember just, what makes me happy? What kind of makes you go? And I think that's when I really realized that I have something unique. I'm getting opportunities for a reason. And when I'm not getting opportunities, it's probably because it's a lot, when people say, fake it till you make it. No, be true to yourself, be authentically you, because then you don't have to keep trying in your head to keep, okay, well, now I have to do this again. And now I have to do this again because this is who they think I am. Now it's just, this is what you get, hopefully you like it. If you don't, well, sorry, it just is.
We tried.
Exactly. It is what it is. And so for me, this is kind of why I love, people call me Cannon now, and I've kind of branded my name. I love now, that when I first started, oh, you smile too much. Well, I've always been a smiler since I was little. Like that's part of me. Like
I was the opposite.
Right?
Like, why are you always frowning?
To that point, it's like sometimes I feel like I've had to smile in rooms because, as you said, you have to fight that stigma of being like kind of that quote angry Black woman. And so when I'm not smiling, all of a sudden, Kelsey, what's wrong with you? Or you got an attitude with something. It's like no, like I'm just I'm here. I'm in this space. Nothing's wrong. But I am allowed to have emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it's like knowing I can't react the way other people can react sometimes,
right.
to different things, so it's, a lot of people talk about this imposter syndrome. And I think that's what the imposter syndrome is. You think you're trying to be what you want, what they want you to be, because you're afraid if you're really yourself, they're not going to fully accept it and you might not be there. And, so it's kind of that double consciousness that you're battling. And I remember doing that a lot, but I think as I got older, I think it does come with time. I really realized like it was a lot of baggage. And when you're carrying so much baggage sometimes, I remember just sometimes having like dark days, when I would just like be home and just, sit there and just be staring at a wall, sometimes being like, what's wrong? Like what's wrong with me? Why am I not enough for everybody else? And I think, when I went to that place in space, I just got tired of being sick and tired, honestly, quite frankly. And, one day I was like, I'm just going to be me, and like you said, sometimes people are going to tell you, I've heard all the time, your hair, I used to have big curly hair. Your hair's too big and curly. When I was younger, experimenting with colors, it was all these different things. And, now I'm like, hair can be changed, but it's me. Like it's a part of me and my expression of myself and, who I am. And, working in media and broadcasting, of course, people will have thoughts and comments and, that's fine. But I'm the one that has to wake up, as me. And I'm the one that goes to sleep as me, not you, not anybody else. I'm the one that kind of has to deal with everything that comes with it. I feel like once I really started to be myself, things started to change. I felt more comfortable. I thought I sounded more confident in my voice, more commanding in my voice, and better things kind of started to happen. happen. And I
Yeah.
realized that people do like me for me and will hire me for being me. So I
Yeah.
think that was kind of the turning point when I didn't think that would happen at first. Cause, I'm like, I'm kind of coming up, I'm growing my name and brand, so they're not going to hire me because they don't know me yet. But instead, people really liked what I had to offer. It was different, it was unique, it was welcoming, it was inviting. And that's kind of, I think, what kind of helped to then separate me kind of from the pack and me start
Mm,
to get more opportunities. And so I'm like, that's always what I would, when people ask me, like, what would I tell my younger self? Be true to you. Be you,
mhm.
Kelsey. You're going to be fine, and if people like it, they can take it or leave it, and the rest is going to be history. But, I just
Yeah.
didn't know that growing up because I thought it had to be society's image, be how society wanted me to be. But there's enough of those people,
Oh
who are
yeah.
like robots and kind of following the status quo. But, if you're going to, my biggest thing is if you're going to bet on yourself, you have to truly be authentic to yourself. You have
Yeah.
to be true to yourself. And that's when
Mhm.
you really are betting on who you are. And other people will bet on you that are supposed to bet on you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you speak a lot about, we talk about the fake it till I make till we make it. That's just bad, right? Because it's like you have people that's just can have been faking their whole life. Like
Unfortunately,
they never meet themselves because it's always something, especially now with everything coming out is like, your nose got to be a certain way. You got to have this, that, you're just going to be constantly changing everything because it's just always changing what's new and what's trendy, so it is important that, you talk about being you. And I remember being at an event, I was speaking and couple of other panelists got up there, and then one lady said, just do you, be you.
yeah.
And this one woman, she stood up and she said, but what if you don't know who she is?
Hmm.
She said, I've never, she said, my whole life, I've always tried to be whoever everybody said I should be.
Right.
And so she said when people always told her that was, that's the go-to, girl, do you, be you. And she's like, I have no idea what that means, who she is. So what would you say to someone like that says, okay, be me? How do I get to the be me?
Yeah. I think the being you is a journey. You don't wake up one day and say, this is who I am. All the time people ask me to describe myself, the first thing is a Black woman. That's the first automatic thing that I say. Then from there I can kind of describe my characteristics. But, I think when you're being you, that's when you have this joy inside of you. That's when you have this happiness inside of you. This is when you don't have to code switch all the time when you're between different groups and different things because you're just being authentic and true to you. And once you realize too that you don't need others' satisfaction for you to be you, I think that's when you kind of find yourself. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to be themselves because they're afraid how other people will either accept or reject it. And that's the thing in our minds, unfortunately, as a society, we're taught, you want kind of everybody's approval. But why do you need everybody's, approval? You shouldn't have to, when you're born, your parents obviously gave you the permission to be born and, there's no other approval there. And, I think unfortunately though, a lot of us find satisfaction, we find happiness from what others say about us. But I think when you can really sit down and describe who you are. And one of the exercises I'll never forget I had to do was like write down who I was. And, that was one of the things I remember just thinking back in my head. I was like, who am I? And, a lot of people write their careers first and, what they do, but that's just what you do. Who are you truly? When you take off, at the end of the day, when your title isn't there, your degrees aren't there, who are you? And when you really sit down and reflect on yourself, and for me, it's really finding time to take an hour out each day now to do something that I want to do, something that I love that's outside of work. That's when I really get to be me and reconnect, with me. So like certain things, as I've gotten older, like I've liked to try new things. I'm kind of like I'm super afraid of heights, but I've gotten older and I'm able to test myself, and kind of test those limits. And I realized, I like trying new things. I like meeting and connecting with people. I've learned to like, I love going out to eat. I love to travel. Like those are kind of the things that I really like to do that define me. I like doing things that are culturally. So to that person, I would say take time out and find out, what gives you that spark, what gives you that joy. When do you find yourself happiest around other people? Because when you know yourself, it's not only going to make you better in your career, but it's going to make you better in your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your spouse or loved one. Everyone's going to kind of realize that and notice that because you're going to be more confident in yourself. And confidence is something, that you carry and you can wear it really well and it will radiate and it will reflect off of others. So to that person, that's again, take that time. Don't think you need to find it overnight. If anybody's listening to this show and thinking, well, I still don't know who I am. I don't know if I'm going to know it by tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to know who I am after the 4th of July holiday. It's okay. There's time. Life is a journey. And throughout this journey, who you are is going to probably change too as you grow and get older. Your circles are going to change. Like so many things are going to happen, and you are going to constantly evolve and change. And also realizing that, so who I am today is different than, who I was, 10 plus years ago now, I guess, when I graduated high school.
Well, it's never too late, right? It's never too late. I think people have to know that, like,
you can be 60,
because you're 40 or you're 50 doesn't mean like, oh, well, exactly. I should have done this long time ago. It's
exactly.
like,
exactly. And you can't think like that. I think, I've had to learn, I'm still learning, timing is everything, and everyone's timing is different. It's hard because, a lot of us, we live in this now world, where I want this now, I want to know this now, but that's not what it is. For some people, it might come earlier, for some people it might come later, but just realizing it does not matter. Everyone's path is different. And it's okay. I have a good friend just now starting off in broadcasting. He's in his 50s, but he's happy. He's finally doing what he loved. And now he feels like he's finding who he is and can say, he's true to himself. So it's never, and I tell him that all the time. He's like, do you think I'm too old? No. And he's doing it now, and he's broadcasting and doing, different activities, learning what it is to be behind the camera, because people want that passion. And people can see it in you. And luckily, that's why he's been able to get opportunities. So again, never too late. It's a journey. It's going to change. You are going to change. And people around you will either accept it, reject it, but you're going to keep on being you and being true to you, because there's nothing better than that. And I think at the end of the day, I say, like, my legacy, I want it to be like who I am. I want to be like, she was a person, that gave back. My favorite quote is, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And so at the end of the day, for me, it's about what I leave for others. I hope people know that's who I am. I love connecting with people, talking with youth groups and kids, because that's what's big to me, because I had so many people pour into me and so many mentors pour into me, especially as someone who went to like 14 daycares growing up. So I was the first one there and the last one to leave. So many people poured into me to make sure that I would be who I wanted to be and that I could be the best of me. So that would be my message to them.
Now, I believe, you've iterated it a few times, but I'm always taking notes on certain things. Like, dang, let me write that down. Oh, let me write that down. Let me write that down. Something you mentioned earlier, how they knew you, or they know you as Kelsey that does some of everything.
Yeah.
And she does it with a smile. Now, so many people look at individuals in your type of position, entrepreneurs who are serial entrepreneurs that seem like they do everything, and they wonder, how do you do it and maintain a smile? And one of the things, when you learn how to bring about that balance, you do so much, and you do it at a high, quality. You do it with a positive mental attitude. There's philosophers throughout history that tell you, when you can put that combination together, you can pretty much write your price tag to success in life. So kind of speak to us a little bit on how you maintain that positive outlook, that smile all the way around. Hit on some of the times where you may fall off the wagon, so to say, and what you do to get back in that positive space.
Oh, yeah. So one thing I'll say, I'm big on positive energy. Anybody that knows me knows I like positive energy in my space and circles, because I think it radiates, and people kind of come to you when you have that positive energy, which for me is great because I'm a networker, especially as someone that is a freelancer, always looking for opportunities. It's great when I'm able to have people talk well of me and talk good of me, for me to kind of get the next job. But I think for me, I smile honestly because I feel blessed. And I don't say that to sound cliche, but I have my health, I'm living out my dream. I'm living in the nation's capital. I feel like for me, there's so many things that, I could be mad about, yes, but there's so many people that are battling so many more things than me. And I realize when you smile, it's even sometimes like when you walk, you can make a person's day. It's like when you walk by somebody and you get that smile back, like it radiates, and it's just like, it feels good. And I think for me, I think my parents would tell you, I've always was a happy baby, but just because again, I felt like I was in a good place. Now, yes, I think a lot of times people like Kelsey's always smiling and happy. That means she doesn't go anything. No, that's not true. But my biggest thing is, what I go through, I don't try to reflect on other people. So of course I have bad days. I have tough days. I've had those recently. But what happens to me is not a reflection for you. And so for me, it's not about wearing all my emotions on my sleeve. Some people do. I personally don't. And again, it's just because I feel like if I do that, that's going to reflect everything else that I do. When you have a bad day, and you start to wear it, nothing's going to kind of go well. I feel like, you can't have the same energy going into your work, your job. People going to be like, oh, she's got an attitude today. Like, it's just not going to be well. So for me, it's realizing, you have a bad day. It goes back to my playing days. You shake it off and it's about the next play. Right. So now it's like, let me get back into the game. Let me try to refocus. And I think that's what my smile is. It's me refocusing my energy on the next best thing to come. And, each day, I don't know what's going to happen. I get opportunities like this to come onto this podcast. I get cool opportunities each and every day kind of. And I think for me, a smile is welcoming and people kind of want to come in and get to know you more. And that's what I like. I like to meet people. I like to always have a different day. And so I think for me, again, it's natural. Sometimes I've had people think it's like, she can't be that happy. It has to be fake. And it's like, but then when they get to know me, they're like, all right, I actually understand. Like, she's actually naturally like this. It's a part of who she is. And honestly, it's probably part of the Southern vibe too. Like, if you spent time down South, like, and you understand this because you're from Mississippi. It's like, when you go by people, you talk to people, you wave to people. I remember I get in trouble if I had like a rude, but my grandmother probably like smacked me or something. Or my granddad would smack me if I just look rude and, didn't say hi to so-and-so. And so that's just this is literally me. This is how I am. And then I have my family, my parents are healthy. Luckily, my sister just graduated college, magna cum laude, like things are going well. And that's not to say like there's things in my life and, that I wish were better. There are things in my life that I still want, I'm still writing my story. But, I feel like for me, I'm smiling because it's God's plan. And honestly, when I'm following that, whatever happens, and it's his will. And so I feel like, I'm a woman of faith. And, I feel like when you walk by faith and not by sight and you trust, then I think, good things will happen. And so, that's not to say I don't go home sometimes and I'm just mad. I'm somebody that like has high expectations of myself. And so like when I don't get things, I take it personally. I'm like, geez, like, what did I do wrong? I go back to the drawing board and just try to figure it out. But, luckily, I also know it's a new day. Maybe that opportunity wasn't for me and something else is going to be along the way. So for me, it's a lot about reflecting back. This is why I think, again, it's so important to take time to yourself. That hour I give myself each day is important because that's my grace period. That's when I give myself grace and I give myself space, to kind of have those emotions that I just kind of need to get out. And then once they're out, they're out. And then I'm back to being the person who I am. But again, for me, it's just me carrying all my, weight on my sleeves. That's not going to want people aren't going to want to work with me probably then. It's like Kelsey always got something wrong with her. She's always like having these emotions and attitudes. And again, that's not to say it's wrong, but that's just not who I am. I want people to see that, she comes with a business attitude. She comes with a positive mindset. There's a reason why, they give the Miss Congeniality Award. There's a reason why, they give awards in sports to the person with the best attitude and best team player, because everybody needs those people. And those people, I think, understand their role. And I think I understand my role. And I'm blessed to feel like, God put me on this earth to hopefully make other people happier, make other people smile. And that's kind of the role that I feel. And again, this is just natural. Like, I get mad about things, but it's not for me to carry that and put that on to you. You didn't do that to me. You guys have nothing to do with that. So me bringing that to you does nothing for either one of us. And there's no gain for either one of us. And for me, I'm always about, how do I get better? Getting better is not going to be carrying extra baggage or extra weight, because we have enough that goes on in society and in life that we have to go through. And it's like, you don't need another, it's like, the airplane, you don't need that other bag to pay $40 for however much it is now. Like, I want to erase that, I want to go just with what I have and try to get to that next destination.
I love it. And it ties into you getting opportunities. Like, so many people get caught up in their emotions whenever something goes wrong and don't realize you riding that emotion is likely preventing you from that next opportunity that was waiting for you.
Right.
And there's the overlap, or there's a similarity in, what you mentioned about yourself as far as Miss Positivity. When I was going through my master's program, I was token that name, Mr. Positivity. He's always doing these motivational talks on Facebook Live. There he goes doing another live. Like, what are you talking about this time? And I'm like, this is just me. I'm not trying to impress you.
That's
this is who I am.
Natural.
And you know how they say it's about who you know and not what you know?
Yes.
You alluded to it earlier. yes, you can get a seat at the table by who you know, but you're not going to keep that seat if
Oh,
you don't have the what,
right.
if you don't have the background, you don't have the actual experience. And so many people frown about that
Yeah.
whole, perspective or that whole concept. And I just tell them, network, get out there and get to know some people. When you're doing it, have a big old smile on your face. Bring
People
the
will come up
value.
to you. Yes.
Yeah,
It
be able
makes
to
a
hold a conversation
difference.
from a lot of different areas.
That part
Like,
too.
so you know that area too? Like, what don't you know? What don't you do?
That too. And
When you
people
can
like
become
to
that
be able to hold
person.
a conversation. I'm so glad.
Exactly. And I'll get people that I'll go to a networking event with some surgeons or with
Yeah.
some social workers, with some CEOs. How do you go to all these different opposite end of the spectrum type of events?
Yeah.
You have to be able to hold a conversation and articulate yourself across the board, at least a little bit
Yes.
across the board. And it makes me think about the whole, and I mentioned this quite often recently, um, a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Like,
Yes.
that's just a part of that saying. A lot of people don't realize that's only a portion of that saying. The full saying is a jack of many, or a jack of all trades, but a master of none is always better than a master of one. Or
There you go.
yes, because you can hold your weight at many different tables. You can add value in many different areas, whereas a master of one, you are only relevant for this specific tiny little.
Exactly.
Yes, so I
Exactly.
love you mentioned, that you have those skills all around, because people can bring you in to speak about a ton of different topics.
Exactly.
Ton of
Exactly.
different topics.
And that's huge for me, as you said, and especially like I tell people all the time, yes, I do sports, but I was hired to do the election campaign trail a couple years ago. I've also done public policy and politics, all the time. When you're networking, people ask me all the time, oh, you're in DC. I know about obviously what the Supreme Court just handed down. I know about the protesters that are in the city right now, obviously protesting the overturning of Roe versus Wade. I know about Ketanji Brown getting sworn in. Like I need to know about all these different things. And that's how you kind of network, right? I mean, I think that's what, for me, networking is not just, who you know, but who knows you. And so this is
Exactly.
too when branding is so important. This is too when pushing yourself on social media is so important. I get a lot of opportunities now, especially during COVID. I was still getting opportunities to speak on a bunch of things, because I was still being able to network through social media. And that was by pushing my media work and content out. And people came back, to network with me. But also when you know one person, there's only, 3 degrees of separation between anyone. When I was walking back home today, right before this show, I hear Kelsey. And I, stop, and it's this car. And honestly, I didn't remember who he was at first. And he's like, Kelsey, you remember where we worked together? I was like, no. And he's like, I'm Amon. I was like, oh my God, Amon. He's like, yes, we used to work summer camp together. So this is my first job, when I was 16,
Wow.
working as a camp counselor. I haven't seen him in years. And, he's like, he's working, I won't say his job, but, he's like, we need to network. He's like, I'm sure, he's like, let's do, a happy hour soon and catch up. And that's great. And we work in 2 separate fields, but again, 3 degrees of separation between everyone, especially working in sports. Sports touches everything. I do a lot of stories about athletes, nonprofits. If you think about athletes getting more vocal and more political, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, they're involved in politics. A lot of politicians now too will try to, talk with athletes. We see different laws. Again, Title IX was a perfect example. I just talk at the Women's National Democratic Club here in DC. I never limit myself, and I like being able to be versed on different things. And I think another reason why too, that's why I'm a big proponent of not just having, using all your skills. I remember when the government shut down here, and in DC where there's a lot of government workers, a lot of people didn't realize where their next check was going to come from. This is when it's nice to have those other skills, or to have network, to see what else is out there, to find out about other opportunities. I get a lot of opportunities thrown my way all the time. One of my, people reach out to me the other day for a producer position. I'm able to send that to people that I know to share in their network, share in their newsletters, and hopefully somebody gets that job. That's huge. And so this is why all the time, as you said, never, relinquish yourself to just one thing. And as you said, I like to be a master of many things. And I think that's huge. But those things I'm a master of, I am a true master of. I don't just know a little bit about a little bit. I know a lot about all these different topics. So people feel confident, when they bring me in to talk about these different issues, one of the best things in college was do internships in a lot of different fields. One of the internships I did, I was a public debate moderator for a site called publicsquare.net. And so I would literally sit in the middle of these lobbyists and different analysts, politicians, and I would moderate their debates. And it was a great skill to learn because as a moderator, you have to know when to chime in, you have to know when to cut people off, how to flow from different topics. But then I'm meeting all these people in the different government fields, and government touches everything, folks. So again, you're networking with different people. People like what you're doing. They're spreading and sharing your name. And this is why it's so important, to put your best foot forward every time. Another reason why it's good that I put, this positive demeanor forward, because you never know when your name is being spoken in places that you don't even know about, and that happens a lot for folks. And that's sometimes why you'll get that opportunity, you open your email and say, oh, wow, I've gotten invited to this, I've gotten invited to that. And it's because, again, your name is being spoken in places you don't know about. And you want that to be a positive, though. Sometimes your name is being spoken in places maybe as a negative. You don't want that, like, oh, don't hire her, stay away from him. You don't want that. You want it to be, she's phenomenal, she's great, he's phenomenal, he's great. I highly recommend, if you have anything, like, make sure she's there, send her an invite. And that's huge. And that's why for me, I'm always thinking I haven't done enough. I feel like, Kelsey, like, for your age and what you've done, like, you've done a lot of stuff, and how you do all this stuff, I don't know. And you're doing stuff that, like, I've dreamt of. And for me, it's like, wow, I don't think about it that way. I'm thinking always like of more, but that's also why I'll say, like, another important lesson is, as much as you plan for the future, never forget to also live in the present and live in the moment and really realize, what you're doing, and be thankful for that. Because I think, we have this forward thinking mindset all the time about what's next. No day is promised. So also, again, be happy about where you are in the journey that you've taken to get where you are, but also, of course, always be forward thinking and planning for the future. But yes, network. It doesn't just mean in person. Again, social media has made it even easier now to network. Yeah. Make sure you're part of groups. Make sure you're going to different conferences. And again, my biggest thing is never walk into a room and walk out of a room with no one knowing your name or that you were there. If you ever walk into any room, at least one person should know you're there and know about you. That's my thing. I'll meet people that, like, go to different events here, even in DC, and they're like, I went there and I didn't really vibe with anybody, so I just left. Why'd you waste your time even going? Like, I just don't. If I'm taking the time to go somewhere, I'm going to take the time to at least get to talk to a couple of people, meet some people, swap business cards or social media information, and then I can leave the room, because you never know where that's going to lead to or land to. You have to push yourself. I understand that not everybody's extroverted. Networking can be awkward sometimes, but this is good to be versed in different topics, as you said, so you can be in any room and feel in place in any room and feel comfortable in any room to talk to anybody in that room.
Wow.
Say it, girl.
I was going to definitely add, because we're always, like you're saying, going to the next thing, right? Like, you're living, like, when you are balancing or having multiple things going on at the same time, it's like your mind is always, and I was the same way, and I still am the same way. But I had to train myself how I had to make a conscious decision to be more relevant. I mean, be more present. And it didn't really dawn on me until I went to a reunion with some of the girls that I was part of my track team. Nice. And they saw me, and it was like, Sherelle, do you remember the time that we ran across the street to Whataburger right before and I didn't remember anything. Wow. And then I see, like, a slideshow and presentations, like, of our coach and stuff, and it's like they're showing all, and I'm in every picture. I'm smiling in every picture, and I'm, doing all this stuff. But I have no idea where we were at. I don't remember any conversations that were made, and so I had to learn how to be more present, like, to be able to just sit for a second. And although COVID was, of course, bad, and it still is, it really helped me spiritually to just be. Like, and that was a challenge. Like, so you want me to sit here and not think about nothing else but just right now? Like, these were conversations. So I'm having this argument, like, the Sherelle that wants to think about everything, and then the Sherelle that's like, we're supposed to be chilling. I'm having this constant battle of, being present. So I'm so glad that you spoke on, being very present where you're at. And because for some it is work, even when I went to, like, grieving counseling when I lost my brother, it was like, she had to teach me, like, just be very She's like, when you think about life, what do you think? I'm like, oh, I have to win. Like, I need to win in my spiritual life. I need to win in my personal life. And she's like, okay, but where's the competition? Like, who are you competing with? And it was like, myself.
Yeah.
Like,
sound just like me. Yes.
Like, so if you're competing with yourself, you know when to like put a cap on it. I'm like, no, like, and so that's just how I operate. I was always wanted to win. I always wanted to, be that person or be in that space.
Yeah.
But I was opposite of you when it was like, people weren't always asking me, why are you smiling? I was always why are you mad? It's like, I'm not mad, and so
Right.
it was always that. So I had to make another conscious decision. Okay, when you walk into the room, smile more, because if you're not smiling enough, people are going to think that you're mad. And, so that was a part of the journey of like just finding yourself. And so what I started to do was like, okay, I can't walk in there like Kelsey and just be smiling, right?
Yeah.
I know that I can't, right? And so, but I do know that if I see someone in a group talking or speaking about something, I will go over there and be like, and I may join the conversation or tell someone like, you know what, I really like your shoes, even if I don't, but it's like, I know that they may start talking to me, like, oh, girl, you do? Oh yeah, I like your shirt, and so that helped other people to be like, oh, she is sweet, she is soft, she does have that side. But that was my way of finding what works for me, to be true to myself without being something that, I got fired at Applebee's in high school because I didn't smile enough, like they're like, you're not smiling at the guest. I'm like, I can't smile the whole 8 hours.
You're like, my mouth hurts, all right? I'm smiling enough.
My jaw is cramping up. This is too much. So I just really appreciate that you just continue to be you, because it is a journey, right? And we do have these stigmas, and we do have these challenges of being, that you can't be beautiful and smart, that you can't be this and this, and you can't be, and it's like, why not? And so I'm so glad that you continue to walk in that and be obedient, because it's through your obedience, right, that we and the ones after us or behind us that's coming can see, like, I can be all of that without being what everyone thinks I should be, or doing what they think I should say. And so it reminds me of, I always give an example of when Jesus was walking to save, right? Everyone was pushing him to save one, but it was the one person that pulled his garment that he stopped.
Yeah.
And so I'm always thinking about, what is pushing you, what is pulling you? The thing that people are pushing you to do, you're good at. Oh, you're good at being a coach. You're good at being this. It's like, but I want to be an athletic director. When I'm laying down at night and I'm seeing how programs are, really damaging some of our young Black males, because now you have these shows, I Am Athlete, and you hear about these athletes speaking about, like, nobody ever cared about me. I thought about killing myself after I had the best game of my life, but when I got home, and it's like, oh my God, what if we created a space where they didn't have to feel like they had to fake it till they make it, where they didn't have to, and so sports is definitely that space now that has so much weight, LeBron can say something and someone else can say that same exact thing, but people rather listen to LeBron.
Yeah.
It must be serious. So it is good that we are using that space more, because it wasn't that for a long time. And now people are saying, okay, look, they're not listening to me, so bring Steph Curry or somebody in here. Bring somebody else.
The endorsement deals too. I'm glad you said that, because I think what drew me, into sports is, I think sports is like one of the places where you can have so many different people come for an hour or however long the game is together for that moment. And, it's like, that's kind of when the ones who I think we actually are one. And of course you can sit, you don't care what the person's background, like, as long as you wear the same jersey and, you might like that trash talk, but you enjoy it. And I remember, growing up, going to like Georgetown Hoyas games and being in hot, sweaty McDonough Arena, but we had our starter jackets on, and, we're all rooting for the Georgetown Hoyas back in the day, and, going to University of Maryland, and then even being in the nosebleed seats, watching the Wizards and Mystics. Like, I just remember loving that thrill and just seeing so many different people, that I'm like, wow, like, that didn't even look like me, but we had fun during those couple of hours, and I think that's why I love sports. And that's why, but to your point, sports are so powerful. It's something I always preach is, to use your platform for a purpose, PMP, use your platform for a purpose. And that's something I love when athletes do that, because they have so much power. And, athletes, whether they like it or not, they are role models, or really anybody, in the public space. If you're in the public eye, again, whether you like it or not, you kind of are tasked with being a role model. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good role model, that comes with time. And, we all make mistakes. And unfortunately, when you're in the public eye, it just gets exaggerated more, and people kind of have, more access to that. But you are. And, for me, even in sports, again, it's kind of athletes too. They have to find out who they are, especially now, with kids going viral, they have people watching them from the 5th grade on, and, scouts coming to games, and all these followers, and everything that you do is being watched and tracked. And, that's why I think it can be hard for people, because it feels like you can't have downtimes. And then to your point, people like to put athletes and anybody in these boxes, like you said, like, oh, like you can't be pretty and smart and an athlete. Like, what are you talking about? Like, especially Black women. Black women can be everything. Don't let anybody tell you anything differently. We are dynamic people. We can't just be placed into, one box. And so I think, what you said, I feel like I remember going through the same emotions, feeling like, I felt the same thing. The first time I talked to a therapist, he's like, I feel like, he told me I had all this weight I was carrying, and I realized the weight was from me. I was putting my own pressures, on myself to be this perfect human being and always be better. And I think, because in school, I was so used to being like, the best. And so when I graduated school, I was like, well, why is the same thing not happening? I didn't understand it. And then, you start critiquing.
There's no trophies. There's no ribbons. There's
what's going on with me, and I felt when that baggage though was starting to wear at me, I just felt more tired all the time, and then even now I understand the importance of sleeping. I'm just learning this, because I used to, stay up all night, because I had to get this done, and this has to be perfect. And, all of that takes some weight on you. And then if you're not in your physical and mental health, all of that is tied and intersected in. And people, again, can tell, when you're healthy, and being healthy is being in a healthy space socially, emotionally, and mentally. And once you get to that place, again, you're just going to find a truer joy, and people are going to find a truer joy in being around you, because it's going to radiate off of others. And that would be my biggest message. Again, it's a journey. But once you really find yourself and know who you are, take pride in that. And for me, I bring who I am to my sports reporting. I try to bring fun, witty lines in. I try to make somebody smile and laugh, and especially when I'm trying to connect with the athlete, I try to be different. I try to ask those questions that not everybody else is asking, as you all do on this show. I try to get their story, because that really tells, who they are, how they got to where, they got to. I love that you're scoring 28, points per game, but, how did you even get to that point? Was it because, growing up, your mom will let you play basketball until the street lights went out, then you had to go back inside, then you used to sneak out after she went to bed and, go back to the basketball court. Like, I want to hear those stories. And this is, that's why I have my podcast still, because I like getting those out of guys and gals to kind of just continue, to see how they got to where they got to. And then a lot of athletes too, again, that hashtag more than just an athlete. There's so much more. They're going back to school. They're entrepreneurs. They're starting clothing lines, and things like that. They're realizing their power. They have their nonprofits. They're building schools like LeBron and changing communities and neighborhoods. There's so much more than the sport they play. And I truly hope, they're running to be politicians, now after there's so much power, in sports. And I really hope, we maximize that message. I preach to sports have always been political. I hate when people say, don't mix my sports and politics. Sports started as a political act, and they will always have, political aspects in them, i.e. that's why you always have the national anthems at games. And then I think sports also as a whole force us to reckon as a society. Sometimes until it happens in sports, we don't talk about it in the larger context. Colin Kaepernick made us have a lot of conversations. Some might have thought they were difficult because they're not used to talking about race. I'm used to talking about race in sports, all the time. But it's important that he helped to kind of push and tread that needle, and I think sports have such a powerful platform. Black Lives Matter movement, when we saw athletes getting more involved, going to these protests, I think more people kind of started to talk about it more, which was huge, because my biggest thing is I at least want to have a conversation. We might not agree during that conversation and dialogue, but at least we're having that conversation. And I think that's what a lot of it is about. And so again, this is why for me, working in sports, it never gets old. I never have a dull day. I never get tired, because there's always something happening. I love talking about how the WNBA were one of the first groups to push advocacy. they weren't getting the attention, but they were doing it. And inspiring sports now, with women's soccer getting equal pay as men. How will that maybe, have a reflection on the rest of society where we know women still aren't getting paid close, especially Black women aren't getting paid close to what they're worth.
We're doing more.
Exactly. So like, but these are the conversations sometimes that start in the sports realm, that kind of trifecta over. And so for me, it's always just sports have always been a microcosm of society. What happens in sports is what we see happening, in society. And that's why it's so important. And even now, look at the changing of, football team names, the changing of school names, a lot of this happened because of the protests that were happening in the sports space that have now obviously kind of crossed over. So for me, I just love intersecting them. I call myself a storyteller because that's what I want to do, tell stories, but also hopefully those stories help to impact and reflect change.
Wow.
Oh.
Hopefully a good ending note.
Yeah. I love that. Sherelle, you probably can attest to this. Like it's been often where we'll have someone to come on and we'll, ask them a certain question and they'll give us a few words and then
that's never been
I love your thoroughness because that's and I know you being in the space, you like to have people that actually give you full responses, thorough responses.
Yeah.
It makes it so much juicier, so much more entertaining.
Oh yeah.
So I want to say thank you for being you.
Makes it more relevant.
Of course. No, thank you. These conversations, as you all mentioned, are so important. And I do try to be as transparent as possible, because not everybody is, but I think it is important because I think that's how young people especially learn, by seeing your trials and tribulations.
Because there will be.
There will be both, and that will be throughout your life. They will never stop. But it's, how you overcome it, I think that kind of defines who you are. And that's what I think life is all the time. Getting back up, dusting yourself off, and going to the next thing. So thank you all again for having me on this platform. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. And I hope, it did resonate with at least one person, out there. And again, my story is still being written. I'm still learning, I'm still learning this thing called life. And, but I think it's been so great for me to just continue to evolve and reflect and keep evolving and reflecting. But the biggest thing is that I'm growing. And that's my main thing. Each and every day, I want to grow as a person, as a human being, as a daughter, as a sister, in all my different roles. I just want to keep growing in those different spaces.
Wow. Well, sister, you are definitely doing your thing and you are doing you. And that is the most beautiful part about you, is that you're just living, you're just being. And that is a beautiful place to be at. And we talked about joy and happiness, but joy is something that no matter what, it's like you can tap into that and you're like, why am I tripping?
It's so important. If I can just say, that's why there was that hashtag Black Boy Joy. We don't talk about that enough. Hashtag Black Girl Joy. Unfortunately, as Black folks, we get a stigma, tied to us. But there's a big thing in Black joy. We need to push that message. I love when I see pictures of little boys and little girls smiling like they're living in their true selves. They're living their best life. Right?
You're not worrying about tomorrow. They're not worrying about, they're just living. You're like, you ain't worrying about nothing, or you see that in kids or you see it in the elderly. You're like, I can't wait to get to the point where I say what I want, do what I want. You can't tell me anything different. So what are some of the events or, that you have coming up where people can find you?
Yeah, of course.
And if you had to leave us with something short and to the point that can reach the athlete, the coach, the teacher, the nurse, the custodian, what would you say that one thing that we need to know?
Yeah, I always say bet on yourself, but that means believing in yourself, investing in yourself. So many times people, bet on games now and gambling, or they bet on, their favorite celebrity. Invest that time and effort into you. Take that chance on yourself and see how it goes. It's not always going to go as planned, but it will work out. That's my biggest piece of advice, is to place that wager, that bet on you. That's the best bet that you'll make in life. I absolutely promise you. That would be my piece of advice. And then as far as what I have coming up next, people can follow me on social media, The Real K Nelson. Also LinkedIn, Facebook, Kelsey Nicole Nelson, my personal website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. I have a lot of cool things coming up. My podcast, I have a lot of special guests coming up. I'll have Big Trip as a special guest. For those that like go-go music, Sugar Bear from EU Band will be joining me next week. Super excited to be talking to him. Honestly, lots of great guests coming on my podcast, Listening with Kanan on Fox Sports Radio. With the NBA news, people will be hopefully, as soon as I get off the show, following me for sure for NBA free agency news. We know we have NBA Summer League, and then football season is also huge for me as well. So we know lots of developments there, and also following, of course, the WNBA. So lots of conversation there. And then also be having some brand new developments for Books Breaking Borders, announcing my board very soon, which I'm so excited about, and officially launching the nonprofit. So please be on the lookout for that, because we will be restarting back soon our literacy camps for parents and families, so we can all be reading together and making sure that children never lack access to quality, diverse, culturally relevant books. So all of that going on, and I hope everybody can follow and check out the website as well, listeningwithkanan.com, to follow who's coming up next. Appreciate your time though so much. This was great.
What don't you have going on? I think that
a life.
I'm like, so when are you going to go?
Man, this is
well, we both share the Nicole middle name. See,
that's middle name out there.
Famous middle name, the Nicole.
I love it. And no, I have to go by my full name because Kelsey Nelson is common. So that's when I was like, I got to be different. So that's why I go by Kelsey Nicole Nelson. So, and also I should say I have a birthday coming up. So that's awesome for me. Shout out to the Cancers. Happy Cancer.
Yeah, there you go. Birthday's coming up. I don't know. You look like the woman that has a birthday like everybody has to celebrate for a month.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like
I have girlfriends like
July 1st.
I'm not going to another party. Okay.
Remember joy. All month. Joy. We're enjoying all month long for the birthday.
Awesome. Well, we are just so glad to have you, and thank you for being you, and continue to do you, because you're doing it well. And it's just been an honor and a blessing to have you here.
Yeah, this was fun. I appreciate the time, the conversation. And again, these are, so important. And I love to see people doing, good things. We just need more of that in the world with so much negative news. So please, you all keep this up. People, please keep coming on and sharing your stories. And know it's okay to be vulnerable. That took me a long time to learn, but it's okay to be vulnerable. None of us are perfect. And, in your imperfection, there is perfection for you. So,
so real.
Absolutely.
All right.
We're going to go ahead and put you in the backstage real quick, and then we're going to close out very quick. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Absolutely amazing, right? So with her, it's like we touched everything. The Title IX, the Black woman, she in all the rooms, and we need more. Not only people like that in our community, but women. We need to see more women just being them, not changing who they are, how they talk, how they walk, just being in your own space. And what I liked is that she spoke about, being in your purpose. And so whenever you are living your true purpose that he has for your life, he will position you for all the people. And so when she decided to be her is when she attracted all the people that she needed to be where she needed to be. So it was just a blessing to have her a part of this podcast and speak on that, because you wouldn't know that from just seeing the smiles. You wouldn't know her story from just seeing the pictures. And so it's so important that we share those stories. So very grateful for her.
Oh yeah. Wonderful guest. And, to have done all the things that she has done at the age that she is, there's so much more to be done, so much more that she's going to do, so much more she's already in the process of doing. So we're humbled to be connected, and definitely look forward to collaborating at one degree or another with her. Off that note, guys, that's all, folks.
You'll find us at wearehsva.com
Yes,
as well. So find out more about what we're doing and who's our next guest and how you can contribute to the company and how we can be partners or volunteer or how we can help you. How can we support you in what you're doing? Because it is not just about giving or just receiving, it's also giving. So we want to give our time, our effort, our knowledge, our love, our passion, all that stuff to the things that you're doing as well. So please make sure that you reach out and see how we can continue to change the narrative within our community and how we can grow as a unit. So thank you again. We love you, The Black Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dr. Sherelle Hobson.
Grand Street. We out. Same place next week. Same time, same place.